If a SaaS tool Snob can find a really trustworthy partner, I think it's a win. Like they can either do it in-house or partner with it with an agency. I think it makes a lot of sense from both sides. Instead of using all your bandwidth to send a million emails, you could say, let's instead have a tiny list, but we go after them with everything that we have. And we reach out via email, we reach out via phone, LinkedIn. We just chase them down because we know they're a good fit and we know they're interested in this right now. That's what I love about Clay, that all the ideas that I had, I'm able to build them out a lot faster and a lot more efficiently and a lot more accurately.
Welcome to the Go to Market podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Hans Dekker, an innovator in the cold email and lead generation space, who will share his journey of building a successful software company that transformed first-line personalization in cold emails. You'll learn how Hans identified the need for a LinkedIn scraper to enhance their product offering, the challenges of the product-led growth model in B2B, and why a hybrid SaaS plus service model can be more effective. Plus, he'll discuss the future of intent data and the importance of personal-level targeting for better outreach. This show is brought to you by Leadbird, a lead generation agency specializing in performance-driven, hyper-personalized cold emails that generate demos and drive growth. Go to leadbird.io to learn more. All right, let's get started with today's show.
What's going on, guys? I got Hans with me here. Most of you guys may not know Hans, but I've known Hans for probably like 4 years now. Started off
Everyone knows
as, everybody knows you, right? So we started off as competitors, funny enough. But now I consider Hans a pretty good friend. Dude I would consider you like an innovator in this space because I feel like you're so ahead of all of these trends and technologies and like building processes that no one's even thought about. And I think that's like that's why I wanted you to have you on the pod, because I think there's so many things we could talk about that you're working on and things that you see. Cause like, you've been around the block and have built really cool things. And I think like the first time I ever spoke to you, you DM me on Twitter and you're like, hey, I got a software I built that pretty much can automate the first line personalization. And this was like, you're the first person to do it in this space. This was like probably like 4.5 years ago. And when I got that message, I was like, dude, no way. Like this, and this is before AI was big. This is before like any of that stuff was happening. I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to save my life. A software that can write personalized first lines for all of my cold emails and scale it. And we definitely copied that idea and tried to spin it up our own. And that's how we became competitors. But dude, you want to give yourself a quick little intro and talk about Lyne real quick?
Yeah, sure thing. So when you say, been around the block, that's a really, really nice way of saying that I'm pretty old. I've been in the space for a while, for close to, no, for the decade now, I think. And in the last 6 to 7 years, really been all in on it. And yet, so I think you're right in saying that about 4 or 5 years ago, we found a Lyne. So I met my co-founders on Reddit on like the 6th page of Google. There was this Reddit thread where it talks about we're doing something with AI and cold email. I was in the same boat as you were in, where I was, running outbound. I had these VAs writing first lines and I just flipping hated it. And from day one of doing it, I was thinking like there's 100%, it's 100% that a machine is going to be able to do this. So when I found those guys, they were some of the first ones to get access to OpenAI and all their cool stuff because they were studying at university, so they got early access. I was on, listen, we should be doing this, and because we had that first mover advantage, things took off. Then some people, they started copying us, and we got into a whole lot of fun. Over the years, we ended up selling that company about a year ago, like a year and a half ago. Been a wild ride, and I actually, funny enough, met one of my co-founders for the first time in person this year, a few months ago. So before that was everything online. So we built the company. So we started, built, and sold the company without ever meeting each other. And now I'm very, very much into Clay, just like a lot of people. It allows me to do a lot of the stuff that I would do manually, or I would just hack together using all these, scripts, APIs, automations. It just allows me to do it all from like a centralized interface, which is really helpful. So yeah, big fan of Clay. If anyone wants to nerd out over Clay, they should definitely hit me up.
Yeah. And let's talk about Lyne real quick. I think like you guys innovated in that space a lot. And I think like the way you built it and the way you kind of went about going to market, like all of it was like so genius. And I remember like, me and my team, we were sitting on the sidelines like, dude, we got to compete with this guy. This guy is crushing us when it comes to just like the way you were going about it. I mean, past sending cold emails and stuff, I think, one, the product innovation that you guys did, like you guys took a product that, and like, I think we both know like quick lines and like Line, there's no real product market fit with it. It's one of those tools where it's kind of a feature versus like a core function of a product.
Mhm.
And, you know, the person could have the the worst deliverability and get the best lines from us, and they would think it's our fault versus theirs. And so
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's
why, it's a high churn space. It's a high,
yeah.
it's a very hard business model to run. But you want to talk about how you kind of introduced like a LinkedIn scraper and how that came to be a part of Line?
Sure. So, one of my first jobs in the cold email space was heading up marketing at Wiza. You may know Wiza, so they have this Sales Navigator scraper. So I learned about how to scrape Sales Nav, how to build all that stuff. And to me, like to us, it made a whole lot of sense. We just looked at, okay, all of our users, where do they get their data? That is either from Sales Navigator or from Apollo. So we thought, okay, we can build a Apollo scraper. At that time, that was a little bit tricky, or we can build a Sales Navigator scraper, which makes a lot of sense because then people can just come to us, and we realized pretty early on, like, okay, this is just the future, right? And we need to have ideally a core product that they come to us for, and then it can be almost like an upsell saying, okay, yeah, also personalize, this data that you're getting me. So we decided to add the Sales Navigator scraper so that we could say, okay, you just go to Sales Navigator, you say, okay, this is a great search for me, you click one button, and then you get all these people, their info, their contact info, all, you get all these additional columns so you can reach out in a personalized way, like intro lines, PS sections, and all that. And you can just take that and drop that into whichever tool you use smartly. It didn't even exist back then. So people would use Lemlist, and, what have you. And that was the entire idea, that you can go, one click from a Sales Navigator search to reaching out to these people. That was the entire vision, I suppose. And because of my background, I knew how to build it. I was lucky enough to work with some extremely talented co-founders, and they were able to ship some really, really cool stuff really quick. And I think that's a big advantage, right? When you have, just look at Clay, they still, like, they're pretty big by now, not super big, but pretty big. But whenever they have an idea, they can have it live almost within days. And that's just what makes people really stick with you as well. So there's two advantages in my experience, that, like, people will stick with you because they say, hey, listen, I'm missing this or that. You say, sure, come back, next week we'll have it for you. And they think, you know what, oh, cool, we're building this product with them. They're really doing it for us. Whenever I have something, I'm sure they'll be able to help me, and they stick around. And then the second advantage being that you're able to test all these different things, right? Like, you may have a vision and you're thinking, yeah, this could work. But then if people don't pay for it, you could say, okay, that's fine, because, 2 weeks from now, we can have a completely new product or future that we can then test. If that doesn't work, great, we'll do something else. So we were able to test a bunch of things and just see what people were willing to pay for. And that's, I think, a really big advantage of running startup and just moving really quick, where you're able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that was like super genius because like, go to market for a first line personalization tool. It's way ahead of the knowledge curve. So you're sending cold emails. I mean, we sent a lot of cold emails for it, saying, hey, we can help you personalize your cold emails at scale. And we got on a handful of demos. We still couldn't
Mhm,
close anybody because it was just so ahead of the curve. And I think like
mhm.
how you took that switch in the product of like, hey, we're not just a first line tool, we're actually a data tool. And you could just pitch that in the email where it's like, hey, where are you guys getting your contact data from? We have an unlimited like LinkedIn scraper that can pull all your leads or for whatever cost, and kind of pitch that angle. I think that is a way smarter way to go to market with like a tool that we kind of built. So I thought
Yeah.
that was
And
like
then,
genius all the way around.
and then the next step with that was, then you're selling to these lead generation agencies, right? Which is, it's not a great market, because for them churn is high. So for you,
Terrible
churn is going to
market.
be high.
Yeah.
And they're really cost cautious, or conscious, I should probably say. So we figured we want to be in a market where things are, more sticky, more mature, different audience. So then, instead of saying, hey, here you have like 5 million first lines and go nuts, you could say, here you have 50. but they're synced to your CRM, and it's basically just research done for you, because all these people, they go on sales calls or they want to reach out. They're not 100% comfortable with having this AI written stuff going out. So instead, you could say, here you have your first line just sitting in your, in HubSpot or in your Salesforce or your Outreach or your Sales Love view, where you normally just send your one by one emails, or maybe you start your sequences. You can either use that to, say to look at it, and it could say, this person has been in a podcast, because we were able to pull that, and they could look at that, and then they could say, you know what, I'm going to write my version, but at least I have all the research, all the information right there. But you're going to save me like 15, 20 minutes, if not more, per lead. Like it would probably be a lot more than 15 to 20 minutes. So there was that was going to be the next step, where we would be able to sync all that research, so not just the output, but our input. Actually, we were going to take our input, which was, podcast transcripts, people that LinkedIn post, news articles. Instead, we would summarize that and then just plug it into people that CRM, and they could see that as research. So that was going to be the next step. But at that point, we were all a little bit burned out, I guess, from moving that fast. And we were just, we said, let's see if we can sell the company, because we had some other visions as well. We were building some really cool stuff internally that we thought would find, better adoption and would be more interesting to pursue. So we ended up not really fully building that out, and we ended up selling the company.
Yeah. And I think another thing that you guys did really smart when you guys went to go to market was like the amount of content that you guys were posting. Like it was high level content that was on not just the website, but also like the conference you guys held. I remember, I think it was called the Cold Email Summit or something. And you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
had
yeah.
all the top dogs speak on it for a whole week. And I remember I would just get on my LinkedIn and I'm like seeing, live video, Alex Berman speaking about cold emails. And I'm like, dang, these guys are crushing it. You want
That
to
was
kind
a
of talk
good
about how
one.
you put that together and like the success of that?
So that was just a random idea. I thought that would be really cool. We can do like a full-on summit, and just have all these like you said, these high-level speakers, right? In the end, so yeah, like content was 90% of. Yeah, so it would be 90% of let's say our go-to-market strategy. And then obviously we got a lot of inbound from that, and we would get on sales calls. So our bigger deals we still closed from, getting on Zoom with people, but they would come from inbound a lot of the time. We would get like we would get between 50 and 150 signups per day just from our content. So that was obviously super helpful. And then you can track their product usage and say, okay, you know what, depending on what they're doing, what they look like, let's reach out, yes or no. So there was that. And then we thought, you know what, we should try and utilize other people, their audiences as well, and really bring all these people together. First of all, because we were not a super big brand like, your Lemlist at the time and other brands out there, we thought, okay, we should at least try and position ourselves with them and get like these high level speakers, get them all together. And we're just the organizers, but they're the ones bringing their expertise. And head of marketing from Milkshake was there. And some other really interesting people. I think Eric also spoke at the event, and then there was another buddy of yours, forgot his name, but yeah, we had some really interesting folks there, and we were able to, like, first of all, utilize their audience, and then the content that came out of that, so the recordings, we could repurpose that. So it basically gave us that really big lift initially, and then it gave us more content for the months to come after that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that was genius all the way around. And one thing I want to talk about, like, or I guess before go into this topic, was there anything that you wish you like if you could go back, you would fix on how you guys went to market?
Definitely positioning. So what I mentioned about the research, as in us plugging into people, the CRM just being a research tool, I would have shipped that as like a lot sooner, just because that just allows you to tap into such a different market. Just have deal sizes that are far more attractive and all that. So and just churn was obviously a big issue for us because of the market that we were in. It would have fixed a lot of that as well. So yeah, I would definitely say we would have gone after a different audience a lot sooner by just making a slight adjustment to our product, adding some. So instead of saying, "Hey, let's ship a Milkshake or a Lemlist integration. Let's ship a HubSpot or a Salesforce integration so people can use it as their research tool. So we should have probably had, that. And then speaking of going to market, so integrations were also pretty big part of our go-to-market because we were able to work really fast, and all these tools like Milkshake and whatever, they have open APIs just like Smart Lead has right now. So you could just say, hey, we built an integration with you. How about we do some content around it? We work together a little bit, and then we were able to really educate their audience because they felt a little bit flattered, like, oh, you know what, this tool built integration with us, and they were happy to collaborate there. Also, because at that point we would be able to say, listen, we have like 5,000 or 10,000 users, and it will be a win-win in that way as well. So integrations were also a pretty big part of our go-to-market strategy. I would have just gone with other integrations so we could tap into a more mature audience, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful all the way through. And you mentioned that you're getting like 100, 150 signups on the SaaS a day.
Yeah, probably.
What are your thoughts on like the PLG SaaS model? I find it to be, and I've said this before on some of the other episodes I did with like V and Daniel and Eric. I find the PLG SaaS model to be the hardest business model to operate and run, specifically in the B2B lead gen space, because like, you gotta sell very low ticket products. It's self sign up, so that the user never knows how to use it all the way through, so they don't realize the value that they can get from it. And then
Mm,
it's like, you need an immense amount of traffic, and you got to hope that they can kind of go through the entire funnel off the site, sign up, see some level of success, and then they stay. And
mm,
then, typically when it's just cheaper, you just attract like, kind of like the prosumer space, the guys that are just starting out in the space. And so then the churn is horrendous as well. And
yeah.
and to be able to run that model, I think like the guys who have done it, like, the Smart Lead guys, like amazing, because they're crushing it. But I think like most people would probably be better off doing like an agency and just like really getting that nailed down all the way before getting into SaaS. But I'm curious to hear your take on that.
No, I think you're 100% right. It's a flipping grind and it's crushing. And initially we were barely able to take a salary and all that. So it was hard. It is hard, for the exact same reason that you mentioned. And yes, like if I would recommend to 99 out of 100 people to go with a service-based business at first. But yeah, the thing is one thing that I've become a fan of, and yeah, we will probably like growth, but also, you could also call it like a bit of a hybrid model, same case, also a bit of bottom up sales where you just use your tool as sort of your, let's call it lead magnet, right? You have all these inbound signups. Or maybe even if you get like 5 per day or 10 per day, you could still pick up the phone and call them and say, listen, you just signed up, saw you tried some lines, like, what do you think? And, but then you're able to pick and choose a little bit. Then you can say, oh, you know what, there's a sign up from a bigger account. Let's go after them. And you can just, like, yes, there's probably like growth and all that. But you could be really proactive there and set up all the automations, which we did, where you could say, okay, if a bigger account signs up, then we still proactively go after them and, have this white glove experience for them where we onboard them and show them what is what. So, that hybrid model is, if you're gonna start with product like growth, or if you're in that space right now, then that's definitely something that I recommend, where you definitely are being proactive and reaching out to these potential big accounts. But yeah, if you're starting out in business and you're thinking, what, should I start this SaaS tool, $50 a month for people? Then I would say, listen, that's going to be like a major, major grind unless you already have like a huge audience you can tap into, which was obviously your biggest benefit working with, I think his name is Daniel, right? The cold email wizard. Like you had like the really big audience, and that's very helpful. So that would be the only, like, if I had that type of audience, that would be probably the only situation in which I would consider starting something similar again, because otherwise it's just too exhausting, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like people don't realize that, running an agency, right? Let's say you have, a retainer at $5,000 a month, right? And you're selling a SaaS at $50 a month. Like maintaining and acquiring 100 users to make that same 5,000 from one customer on the agency is infinitely harder. Like
Mm.
People are like, oh, SaaS is automated at the back end, the fulfillment is automated. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But when things break and the customers come at you inside of the chat support and then they start calling you at night, like it's not the same. So I would rather, put more time and energy as that one customer. That's probably,
Mm.
more easier to manage, just being, that they're paying you $5,000 versus a 50 and have
Yeah.
like, uh, less expectations, I guess. It's just an easier model to definitely scale, specifically for the first time businesses. And the one thing I would say too about like having an audience, it definitely helped us, in that initial growth. But like I think a lot of like influencers, they try to rely completely on their audience, and if their audience isn't growing consistently month over month, and like
Mhm.
they're generating a ton of traffic through their socials, it kind of plateaus the business. Like you kind of like I truly think to build like a very, very large business, in that 5 to 10 million plus ARR range, like you have to learn how to tap into cold traffic. So outside of
Mhm.
like, your warm audiences and whatnot. And if you don't figure that out, and if your product can't be mature enough to kind of be in that cold traffic space, like your chance of making it like a really large business is very slim. So I think that's like the kind of the downside of the people that try to just sell to their audiences. Like you just
Mhm.
kind of tap out, and you hit a ceiling, and it's very hard to get past that ceiling unless you either figure out how to innovate on the product, or you just figure out how to, acquire way more traffic outside of that brand, which are both really hard things to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely agree.
I'm curious though. So, uh, what are your thoughts on like kind of like well, I guess two things. So one thing you mentioned earlier was like being able to sell into the people that sign up and selling them onto a higher ticket service. I think there's
Mhm.
like a lot of opportunity for agency owners to kind of do something similar. I think like with a lot of like the cost to develop like tools and SaaS products are way cheaper than what it used to be. I think there's an opportunity for a lot of agency owners to build like these free tools, or just like very like, you know, easy flow products and tools that they can host on their site, and then use
Mhm.
that as like a lead magnet to just get a lot of people to sign up and go into it, and then just go start selling into it. I'm curious, like, if
Yeah.
have you deployed any of those kind of strategies or seen anyone doing that?
Haven't necessarily deployed. So the thing is, there's two routes you can go with that, right? Like, yeah, like if you're an agency owner, let's take ourselves as an example, and you're in a cold email agency, then you have this, I don't know, like a really basic cold email tool. So, you'll try like, maybe people who are struggling, like a spam list checker, for example, right? That type of thing. Like, yeah, that could be interesting. But the way I've been thinking about it, what is something that I would potentially still consider is going sort of the other way about it. And what some people used to do is they would set up a Google My Business, like plumber in Chicago, but they didn't own a plumbing business. But instead, they would just resell, those leads. So they would put a phone number on there, and they would say, okay, whoever calls, if you want those leads, like you'll pay me X per month just to sort of, get access to those leads, or you get access to like the first 50 calls, next person gets access to the next 50, that type of thing. You could do the same with content, right? Where you could say, okay, we have a content website, the same that G2 does it, like G2 and 10 Data. They have this huge content website now, and they say, okay, do you want to know who's checking out the sales automation section of our website? Then you're going to pay us 15 grand per year, and we'll let you know exactly who's checking out that section, which is super interesting. Like, I've become a bit of a fan of the G2 and 10 Data, having used it with some of our clients. So if you're able to, purchase a blog around, interesting topics, and then you can say, okay, all the email list subscribers, all the visitors, like I'll sell their identity to these businesses. Then instead of just being, called email agency, you can say, hey, we're a media business. We have all these people coming to our websites. We'll let you know who these people are, and what they're interested in, or if they're interested, they can request a website audit on your website related blog. And then if they request that, then like a web design agency calls them. So that type of thing is definitely something I've considered, where you're using either free tools or content business or content websites for that. That is something that is really interesting. And you don't need a lot of traffic now with tools like our B2B. Imagine you were able to install our B2B on, on Forbes, for example, and you'll be able to see, okay, exactly which people consume a lot of which content. So you know exactly what they're interested in. That would be super cool to have that type of thing at that type of scale. So that's something that has been exciting me for a while, but you would either have to grow something from scratch, which again, like you have the exact same issue with growing like a PLG product. You're going to be, well, starting from scratch, which is exhausting, or you would have to buy up something that's already getting traffic, but that's always a bit tricky as well. So, yeah, definitely something I've considered, not necessarily from the side that you were coming from, saying, "Hey, agency maybe has like a free tool on our website." Sure, I think that's great and that can work, and I've seen that work really well with SaaS as well. With Grobot, for example, they had this email sending time. What's the best email sending time, and then they will get a ton of traffic from that, which is great. But also the other side, I think, is also something that's potentially pretty exciting to explore.
Yeah, and when you worked at Grobots, I think that's a good transition point. Like, tell me more about that. How was working at? I mean, they're kind of like a hybrid now of like both a SaaS and an agency. I think I was actually
Mhm.
just checking out their site yesterday. They sell obviously just a self sign up SaaS that is uh, a full sales engagement platform, has a CRM, has the cold email sending side, has the leads, it has it all.
Mhm.
And they now also offer like an agency white glove experience where they'll come in and kind of run your campaigns for you and all that. But yeah, like,
Mhm.
you want to kind of speak about your experience there?
Yeah, so funny story is that the service side of things is something that wasn't really there when I first joined. So it was sales led. So they were 100% sales and it was going well, but then that model sort of got outdated, I guess. And then they turned to product like growth, but then they had the exact same issue that you talked about earlier. People come in and they're, like they try their best, but they don't really know how to use the tool and they churn, or they sign up, they pay, and they send a couple emails, and then you know what? Like I'm too busy. So then you could just say, okay, we have these, in-house experts. They could do it all for you, and then we work together. Like I was one of the persons who, let's say, spearheaded that project and setting up all these different playbooks that, the moment someone comes in, these are the strategies that we use, these are tools that we use, these are the templates that they can choose from. And just really, and just to give you an idea, one of their people on their team could, for example, manage between like 30 to 40 clients, I think, if I remember correctly, just because they have all the tools, right? It's just within their platform. You just have to set up email templates for them, and then they can just keep going within your platform. So the hybrid model, I think, is also like in that sense, like software plus server is also pretty fascinating, and it sort of hedges you against that grind and like tricky cash flow issues and all that. And you can just grow a lot quicker. It's trickier to scale, and but like either way, going back to what my experience was like, it was a great experience. It was a great team. I traveled to Poland a few times, whatever from. And it was just really interesting to see, that the issue we talked about, that is something that is just industry wide, where, if people could like, I don't know, there's so much education out there about around cold email, but people are just too busy. Because imagine, you want to start a blog. There's so much education out there with SEO, but you're not going to learn it. So you will be better off just hiring someone for it. So that was just, a lesson learned again, I guess, when working there.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point where the SaaS plus service model, I think is specifically in our space where it's way more churn. It's really hard to build a sustainable PLG model is
Mhm.
kind of coming back. I think I just saw a post yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, where Apollo is creating their own lead gen agency or their AI
Yeah,
SDR.
exactly.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they had their service part. They set that up, I think, a few months ago already, and they have like these. So what you see, a lot of them, they what they do, they have like these partners, right? So they already have their official partners who are sort of like resellers, but also service partners. And then whenever someone is struggling with the platform, they go to a partner. But then you also have tools who have like an official, let's say, in-house agency. I think, yeah, it looks like Apollo potentially is going to do that, or maybe something around AI SDRs. But then also Snov already had it for a while where they had this, I think they were called Zebra, which was like their official partner. And they even had it like on their pricing page, like do it yourself or our official partner does it for you, which is, like it's potentially a great partnership for both sides if you can find a trust. Like if a SaaS tool like, Snop can find a really trustworthy partner, I think it's a win-win. Like they can either do it in-house or partner with an agency. I think it makes a lot of sense from both sides. Like as agency is phenomenal because you get all this inbound, right? So I'm sort of a fan of that model. And yeah, like if I were going to start another software business, it's like probably the type of model I would explore first.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. I think like, I mean, we spun up so many different SaaS companies in the last like 4 to 5 years.
Mm,
And, you know, I think like I was trying to figure out, okay, why is this product not growing the way I want it to? And it's just like, okay, this POG model is super hard. But there's just so many people that actually sign up and they're like, hey, like, I would be more open for you guys to just do like a full service type of thing and just manage this for me. And I
mm,
think there's a huge market for that. So I think like
yeah.
it's interesting to see like a huge player in the space like Apollo make a jump like that, because it is obviously way different from what they're currently doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to like see how that kind of like plays out in the next, couple years.
I think they're struggling a little bit, Apollo. That's my, with very limited knowledge, but from the outside in, I don't know. I just get that feeling that they're feeling a lot of pressure because, the space moving fast. They're not like they're adding a ton of future, but their core future, which is their data, is just really, lacking and is really staying behind. So yeah, like let's see, they
It,
raised a
yeah,
huge round, I think a year and a half ago. So I don't know, let's see how they're doing. I don't have a whole lot of faith in them staying super relevant for a lot longer, but let's see.
I don't know. I actually think that what they're doing is actually pretty incredible. So like, I mean, if you look at it from a pure, best bang for the buck. And
Mm,
I think Apollo hits the nail on the head on there, because like their
mm,
data is it's pretty well cheap, or not like super cheap, but it's cheap enough for most players.
mm,
Then they allow the self sign up, so it's much easier, way easier sales process versus like a ZoomInfo where I think it's like 3 times the price. I think ZoomInfo just released their free trial, so it's getting a little bit more competitive for sure. But I also find that their data is pretty good. Like I actually did not think this up until a month ago, and the reason why is because um, like whenever we were sending our cold emails across all of our clients, like I think the stat was like 40% of our emails are getting auto replies saying that this person no longer works here. Something
mm.
crazy like that. Out of all the
Yeah,
responses
yeah,
we're getting, like 40% of them was saying that, which is like, a pretty substantial amount.
yeah.
And then yesterday I was looking at my buddy, his new company that he just started, Hypertide, and he literally made the LinkedIn company page 2 weeks ago, and it was already in Apollo. And I
Yeah.
went into some of these other databases that we have access to, and nothing was found there. And so I thought that was like pretty interesting. And I even said it to him. I was like, dude, I don't know what Apollo made adjustments on how they grab the data from Apollo or from LinkedIn, but they're
No,
definitely
but
doing it at a way faster pace.
this they have for a while, I think, and I've experienced the same thing, but it's a million times easier to keep company data fresh as compared to people data, just because of the
Agreed.
like the size of your data set, like you're working with, right? So yeah, like it's still my go-to. Like whenever I need data, I go to Apollo. So maybe you know, I was wrong about what I just said. There's a pretty decent chance, but I don't know, it just makes I don't know, if LinkedIn were a lot easier, I guess, to get data from that, or not to get data from, but if they just had the same functionality Apollo had, then life would be a lot easier because that's just a lot. That's the source. Let's be honest, that's the source everyone is using.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like for now, yeah, I'll keep using Apollo. I'm just really curious to see who's potentially really going after them. And if someone like ZoomInfo, their CEO, Henry, I think is his name, just looking at his overall vision and just seeing him interacting on LinkedIn and how he's thinking about, data and the collaborative space, it just makes me feel that they're going to be able to take a real large chunk of Apollo's market share in the near future. But like other
Yeah.
than that, let's like to be fair, yeah, you're right. There's not there aren't really, so you have ZoomInfo, Apollo, like who's under there that you would really, comfortably go to get your data, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm curious, why do you think that LinkedIn doesn't release? Because like if LinkedIn, obviously everyone, is pulling the data from LinkedIn. That's how they build out their data sets.
Mm.
Um, and if they just created like a B2B platform or B2B database, what Sales Navigator is, but with actual work emails and did that part,
Right.
like they would be the biggest players in the space like tomorrow. I'm curious, like why you think that they don't like go into that model.
So I think it's two sides. Like first, you know, well, I think emails are pretty large chunk of their income probably, and just for them they want to keep everyone on the platform as much as possible, right? So you send emails on LinkedIn, and you reach out to people, you connect with people, like, you do everything on their platform just because that's where their advertisers are, and it makes a lot of sense for them to try and keep everyone as much on there as possible. And then I think a lot of people right now, they on LinkedIn feel sort of protected because, you cannot really spam that many people. And if they feel like, okay, you know what, LinkedIn actually, selling my contact info, I think a lot of people who aren't really active LinkedIn users, they will really quickly just turn away from LinkedIn and no longer really use it, update it, get their data out of there. So I feel LinkedIn is just, trying to not piss those people off probably.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's funny though, because like everyone tries to mask their data as something special, and it's like we all know it's literally just coming from Sales
Yeah,
Navigator every single
yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly.
Um, I'm curious, is there any like, I guess like B2B SaaS opportunities that you see in the space right now where you're like, if I had more time, I would pursue it.
Um, I mean, not that I have any ideas on how to solve it, but anything around deliverability is a good space to be in right now if you're able to solve it. And I think intent data is moving to a person level. So now everyone is really about triggers and all that, which is interesting. Like you can be in that space, which I think is interesting. Like you can build some cool tools around that. But I think intent data is moving to a person level where you're able to really, you know, follow a person online and see their public online activity and then match that with their job post and a job history and all that. So you pull all that together. And then from a pretty large chunk of the people who are at least somewhat active online, you're able to say, okay, that is a topic or product or a thing that that person is interested in, which I think is a pretty interesting opportunity. So that's here something that I may build out. Like I already built that out for clients internally. So it's one of the playbooks that we have. To productize that wouldn't be super hard. And I think it's a really interesting way you can just go in and say, so instead of going to Apollo and saying, okay, give me all the, SaaS companies in the US, and then because the thing is, and I might start rambling here a bit because I think it's a pretty fun topic, right? So the thing is that you have a tool like Keyplate.io, right? And they do a far better job than Apollo in indexing the market on a company level, on an account level, where they can say, okay, this company is SaaS, but they're sales led or they're PLG, and they have these or those integrations. So then you could say, okay, our best clients who we save a ton of money, they're PLG SaaS companies who are having a hard time onboarding their clients. So then you could say, okay, find me all PLG SaaS companies who, from the outside in seem to have a churn problem. And then you could say, hey, you know what? Seems that you have an issue onboarding your clients. Then, okay, you might reply to that, but like on a company level, it's just so hard to reach out to the right person at the right time. And you could say, hey, we helped a company really similar to yours do something like this. And they're saying, you know what, it's not a priority for us right now because, we're shipping these and those futures and we're building something else or doing this and that. So it's super easy for them to ignore it, even though you're able to help them. But on the person level is different. If you're at the right moment in time or able to see, okay, that person right now. So imagine you were talking on Twitter about, man, shit, PLG is hard. I'm having an issue with this. And maybe you were requesting a bunch of lead magnets around PLG and product adoption, and you were engaging with a lot of LinkedIn content around it, then I'll be able to say, hey, you know what? Seems like Nick is really interested in the PLG motion, how to improve user adoption, like product adoption by his users, and then you're able to predict that person is the one that we should be reaching out to. And I feel that is just the direction you probably want to be going into, just because it's like it's a lot more relevant, and it's phenomenal, right? Like, it's great. You could say this person is interested in this right now, let's reach out. But then B, you're working with far smaller list sizes, which I think is another thing that we're going towards, because again, deliverability. And instead of using all your bandwidth to send like a million emails, you could say, let's instead have like a tiny list, but we go after them with everything that we have. And we reach out via email, we reach out via phone, LinkedIn. We just, chase them down because we know they're a good fit and we know they're interested in this right now. So we don't mind spending all those resources. I think that's, the direction that we could and maybe probably should be going into.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, you said it perfectly. I think a lot of like these B2B databases, they don't index a lot of their companies properly. And so, you may put in software, but have like a baking shop in there or something like that, a bakery.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so one of the things that we've built recently, and we still got to kind of get it better. It's actually something that we learned from Eric, is like using like 4.0 Mini to scrape the websites, or no, sorry, let me say that again. We use Zenrose to scrape the websites, and then 4.0 Mini to identify like what the industry is. And then we'll write another prompt where it's like, is this, is the industry we got from Apollo matching the industry that you're coming up with? Yes or no? And so then we're able to kind of make the copy be relevant to, and we're making sure that we're just reaching out to like people that are actually relevant industry wise on the list. That's been one thing that we've done, because we're finding from like Apollo, like the inaccuracy from some industries, it's as high as like 20 to 30% of your entire list is just irrelevant to what you're selling. The other thing that, I want to build, but I don't know if it'll actually have a great use case, is like pulling or basically looking at every person's title, right? Because I think a lot of titles that Apollo will sometimes give you when you just put like the seniority levels is kind of wrong. Like, I think one time I put like director level and up, and then we had like account executives and like SDRs on there. And, obviously they're probably not the person that's going to make the buying decision there. So it doesn't really make sense to reach out to them. So I think there's another filter that most people could do. It's like saying, hey, this is my offer, and I typically sell to people that are in these titles and these roles at a company of this size. Is this role relevant and a person that I should be speaking to? Yes or no? And then you kind of get that filter too of like removing just non-decision makers and kind of making the guess there. I don't know how much that will impact it, but that's something that I'm excited to like test out and see if it has fruition.
Yeah, exactly. And those are some small tools you can pretty easily build out internally, where you just, get all your lists and run through that first, and then you have a far smaller list, but it's a lot more relevant, right? So that's, I think every agency, like if you're using Clay, that's sort of easy, but you're spending, well, that's not true. You could do it with GPT. So, like I think it makes a lot of sense for every agency to do it, just because instead of then having to buy like 100 inboxes, you can just go with 50, because you have smaller list, is more relevant, your spam complaints are going to be lower, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think like even on the spam complaint side, like looking at a lot of people and how they kind of do outreach, like a lot of people don't execute the fundamentals properly, right? Like, very rarely have I seen a lead gen agency that consistently cleans like the company names or cleans the titles. And then they're just ripping cold emails that are like, hey, I saw that you work at Leadbird LLC. And it's like, dude, nobody's replied to that. Or they'll, just not format the or the titles normally. So it's like, oh, I saw that you're the chief executive officer at Leadbird. And it's like, like that's a dead giveaway. So I think that's another thing too. But I think like if you can execute the fundamentals and then start doing a lot of these, like, I would say like, second level strategies of getting things to be a little bit more tailored, like even if you have a shitty offer, you still have a great chance of making sure you don't get that spam complaint rate to be super high, just because you're just executing the fundamentals. And then you want to kind of speak about the stuff you're doing inside of Clay, because I think I see you post about it a lot, but some of these like crazy strategies. And it's funny too, because like I remember when we first met, you were executing some of these crazy strategies before clay was even like big and running just like really unique campaigns. But yeah, you want to kind of speak on that?
Yeah, so that's like I said earlier, is that Clay really allows you to do that stuff that would take days and days to set up and really like duct tape all this stuff together. It just allows you to do it from like one, from one table. You're in that table, you have an idea, and you can build all these really cool plays where maybe you're like, just today, I built something just for fun where you say, okay, I have a list of people. Let's take their entire LinkedIn profile. Let's find the job they were hired to do. So you see, okay, here's, head of marketing at Milkshake. Then you find the job post they were hired for. So you start looking for head of marketing at Milkshake that was posted in the last X years. Like imagine they were the company for 5 years, then find it, up until 5 years back. Then you can see what their main responsibilities are. And then you have those things that you tie together. And then you look at their company, what stage their company in. You throw all of that into GPT and you say, "Okay, what is most likely, on this person's plate right now as the main priority, all that." So you and I had that idea a long time ago, but to build that would take me days just to do it, and it would be just really flipping annoying. And now I can build it in, I don't know, 30 minutes probably, and just run that test. Works great. If it doesn't work great, like on to the next one, right? So that I think is the biggest power of Clay, where if you already had the knowledge, then you're able to just execute so much faster and just run all this really cool stuff really fast. And like at Growth Engine X, we were able to serve so many clients with such a small team, just because you're able to do all this stuff just from one centralized tool. And that's, I think, the biggest, for me at least, the biggest benefit of Clay, where you're able to take yourself and just really be like a Tony Stark in there, just you running everything and being there, like, I don't know, sitting there and serving all these clients and building all this cool stuff without hiring like an army of people, or without having to work with like 50 different tools. And I mean, to be fair, to save Clay credits, I still have a bunch of subscriptions that I'm using, but it's, it's different, right? At least I get to manage it from one interface. And that's what I love about Clay, that all the ideas that I had, I'm able to build them out a lot faster and, a lot more efficiently and a lot more accurately. And the ideas that I'm having, I'm able to test them a lot quicker and just arrive to ideas that actually work.
Yeah, and do you feel like a lot of people like overdo clay? And the reason why I say this is I bet you a lot of people that are listening to this, they're like, oh, like, the reason my cold email campaigns aren't working is because I'm not doing this like next level advanced stuff. I
Mm,
think, there's two buckets, right? There's people that have like kind of a demand gen offer where they don't need to make it fancy. They just literally need to say it, right? So it's like, paper lead gen is a great example. Like you could email anybody and say, hey, I can get you leads on a paper lead basis, and they'll be interested. Um,
mhm,
and you don't need to like do all this crazy clay stuff. If you do, it's only going to make the campaign better, but it's still
mhm.
going to work. And then there's the other boat of people that they just don't have an offer that's attractive, and they think like doing a lot of this like really specialized things in clay will just like, take their campaign from doing like one lead a day to like 50, when in reality
Yeah.
it's probably like one to maybe two, which is still a huge increase. But yeah,
Mhm.
like I'm curious on your take on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of people sort of suffer also from fancy place syndrome, right? Where they think, oh, I have to do it super advanced and do, like you said, do this stuff and just really build out this way, and then I have to screenshot their website and analyze it, and then like, I don't know, like a lot of the things that a lot of people are doing, you can already just achieve a better segmentation, like we talked about earlier. And like just really basic stuff, like, okay, I have a big list of my entire TAM, and it's a mix of CEOs, founders, and head of growth, for example. Then you just split that and say, okay, here's only the head of growth people, and then you can say, hey, as a growth leader, I'm sure this and that, and you can just write something really specific to them. And then you can say to the other ones, you can say, hey, as a business leader or as a founder, I'm sure this and that is on your plate. And you have these two really separate strategies. and it's just super basic, but you can just write something really relevant to them just by simply segmenting better. Or just saying, hey, see, found you found your business a year ago. I'm sure you're still on this stage. Or you found your business 5 years ago. I'm sure you're still on this. So a lot of things just come down to really good segmentation. But yeah, like for some of the stuff, like you do at times, you know, get an advantage out of doing slightly more advanced stuff. And it doesn't have to be super advanced. It can be something as simple as, okay, I only want to target companies running ads, which is basic, but you need to do some pretty like tricky stuff in clay or to target those people, right? So it looks really impressive. Oh man, that guy's doing some crazy stuff in clay, but in the end, it's pretty basic. I want to run a campaign targeting companies that are running ads. So yeah, like I 100% agree with you. A lot of people should just stick to the basics and see, okay, what can I just improve in my segmentation to arrive at more personalized outreach? It's just that with a lot of targeting, it does help at times to have access to that type of thing where you're able to just say, okay, I need this data, and Clay's just able to get it for me.
Yeah, and I think like another thing that people don't realize is like, and this kind of takes us back to like line and quick lines and stuff like that. Like people will say it's gimmicky because it's just like, a personalization on the, or like a compliment on the person,
Mm,
but that works at scale. It works so good. Like we had 1 month where quick lines was off for us because one of our API providers on the back end was down.
mm,
And we generated so many less leads across all of our clients and so many less positive replies. And,
mm.
and, people don't realize that like the gimmicky personalizations, they do work. Even if your offer
Yeah.
is bad, like they definitely do help you stand out. And like another one we've been doing recently, and we're about to put this on all of our campaigns, just because it works so well. We
Mm,
basically pull in the colleague, like the person we're reaching out to. We pull their colleague, like the colleague that's probably the closest to their role,
mm,
and we just mention them in email. So it's like, hey, I wasn't sure if I should reach out to you or Hans,
yeah,
about,
yeah,
and then it coming to that, and it's just all we're doing is pulling in one variable, which is person's name, and it does
yeah,
so good in the
yeah.
campaigns. But yeah, I think like, you know, there's like 3 levels to it that I would look at it if before trying to like figure out how to like work and learn clay. I think all lead gen agencies should learn clay for sure.
Mm,
But like for the average person, I think like one, I'd figure out how can I make my offer better. So like, how can I make it more demand gen versus demand capture? And so figuring
mm,
out how to position it that way. Then I would say like level 2 is like, you clean and like you just do the fundamentals, which is like segment your list, filter your list better, like reach out to relevant people. And then the third is like, okay, how can I add these gimmicky personalizations like quick lines, line,
mm.
colleague references. And then it's like fourth, like how can I execute like a crazy clay strategy that kind of combines it all and kind of like hits it on all ends.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like the referencing a colleague one, that's one of my personal favorites as well. That you can, I don't know, you can save that for a follow-up saying, hey, looks like you're not the best person to reach out to. Should I try Nick instead? If you already have other personalization in your first emails. And it's a moving target though, right? So yeah, like the gimmicky, the personalization used to work. That like the line type personalization, quick lines type personalization used to work as a great first line. Now that effectiveness has probably gone down, but now it works phenomenal as a PS section where you could say, just a regular email, maybe some personalization in there. I use it as a PS section instead because like who on earth personalizes their PS section, right? No one does that. So it stands out. And then reference a colleague in the follow-up or, um, like having tying what your company does into what their company does, that type of thing. So it's a moving target all the time. You're coming up with these new things, but they work. And then the moment you find a working formula again, you just scale it. You use it for as long as you can. You move on to the next one. So that I think comes from love for the game, I guess, and being a nerd for it, where you think, you know what, man, I'm going to try this, this, and this. This seems like fun, and just that only that will allow you to stay ahead of the curve and stay ahead of the rest and keep bringing in results for your clients. Just falling in love with it, and then just like other people that shower thoughts, I don't know what they have in mind, are usually around cold email, thinking, man, I should try this. And that's what just helps you come up with these new ideas, gimmicky ideas that just help your cold email stand out.
Yeah, and this is something we talked about offline as well. It's like everyone posts and has been posting for the last 2 years, like what a good cold email template looks like. And so like I think the average cold email that's getting sent out right now, it's definitely better than what it was like 4 years ago. It's like short, direct, straight to the point, good offer, good guarantee. It's that. And now everyone sees that copy of like, hey, I'm reaching out because I saw that you do this. We did this for this company. Would you be interested in speaking? Like everyone's running a template like that. And what we're doing right now that we're seeing some success with is specifically in like the really crowded markets is like making the email not look like a cold email. And we do that by just throwing in like, these kind of like cheesy, what we call is like cheesy, like first lines where it's like, hey, I know that your inbox is busier than a bee's nest, so I'll keep it quick. And then going into the offer, that's helped us a lot in terms of just getting like positive replies. We have seen it backfire though, if you're selling into markets that aren't really oversold into. So it's hard to identify those. But like in e-commerce, for example, like we know everybody's emailing into e-commerce, selling everything from agency services to SaaS products to whatever it may be. And so, like the stupid little lines like that, it definitely does have a good effect on it.
I like the cheesy ones that you posted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sweet dude, we've been running this for a while. Is there anything that you wanna end off on?
Not really, honestly. Like if people want to learn
Anything to
about,
shout out?
um, yes, shout out to my wife and kid, I guess, for keeping me sane and keeping me from being too much of a cold email nerd and just sitting by my desk all day. And other than that, no, if people want to learn about Clay, check out my website. If they want to learn about Clay for free, check out my YouTube and my LinkedIn. And that's everything that I have to sell for now.
All right. Well, I'm going to shout you out real quick. Clay, or not Clay. Hans has what he calls the Clay MBA. So claymba.com, right? And
Yeah,
it's probably the best resource in terms of like Clay education. So you can learn how to use Clay effectively. You probably have all the different crazy playbooks that you've ran and you guys could probably all incorporate into your business. So yeah, if you're wanting to really check out Clay and learn how to do some of the crazy stuff we talked about on this pod, definitely check out claymba.com and reach out to Hans on LinkedIn and he'll get you going.
Appreciate. Imagine my name actually worked, Clay. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, right. Awesome, dude. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Had a great time, and thanks for the shout out.